we last met last week when we did a tour of all the affected areas and looked at the strategies being used in the cleanup efforts. And today we want to bring you up to speed with where we are at. I'll ask Director Stewart to begin by indicating to us all, giving you an update rather, so that we will, and then we'll take it from there in terms of your questions. So we'll have an update in terms of what has happened thus far for the week, where we are at, and then I will come in on the back end with some projections for the upcoming week. So across to you, Director Stewart.
A very good evening to all in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and wherever you may be in support of this, to the reach of this broadcast. As Director of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency, I consider it a very humble privilege to address you on these matters going forward as to where we are in this response to this national, what can be described as a national disaster. To date, we have seen the areas that I will want to talk about has to do with those critical areas. And I think in most persons' mind, it lends itself to areas along the 15 kilometers of impacted areas on the southeastern end of the island, stretching all the way down to the southwest. We continue to see the resurgence of hydrocarbons affecting certain pockets that are troubling us in terms of the location of those pockets along the rugged edges of and the harsh area of the Atlantic Ocean. These areas are just lower Scarborough and also in the Lambo area, where you have what can be described as short cliffs that are posing a challenge in terms of getting hydrocarbons out of that area. As a result of that, we have seen an extension up to the last 24 hours where the schools in those areas were impacted and remain closed. What we would have done based on the assessment following very organized meetings held with the stakeholders, we were able to see the sanitization and the deep cleaning of the schools, removing droplets or the impact of flames of hydrocarbon that were seemingly causing a problem, even if the air quality showed that we were at zero in terms of how the air quality itself. But notwithstanding that, I think we did the responsible thing based on complaints of persons having itching eyes, itchy throats, being in some cases affected as a result of their own health conditions, the inability to cope with the scent. So the two schools in questions were that of the Scarborough Secondary School and also the Lambo Anglican School. We continue to see international help coming our way. Last time we spoke about other areas of the international body reaching out to us to grant assistance. We welcome the donations of some persons, even in their private spaces, the business community assisting as well. And probably I should take it at this time to really thank those volunteers who have been working assiduously in order to make this thing really happen on the ground. As it relates to volunteerism, the volunteering of assets such as PPEs has become one of the things that we cannot continue to say that we are at a stage where we could say we have enough. We want to make that appeal that we are asking our needs list in the areas of PPEs, even things like water and detergents, to allow for the cleaning of these PPEs and maintaining these emergency responders, oil emergency responders. We are making an appeal to the public to lend its support to us as our needs drive goes out to the public, you out there. And that needs list will be published this evening. So I would like you to use this medium to transmit that to the rest, the wider range of the island and also national who wants to assist as well. Then we can move on to the assets that we see coming into the space, such as TNT salvage, which is everybody's concern as to what is happening with the vessel itself. Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries have in fact engaged the services of TNT salvage, and they're working with some of the partners on the ground together with some of the other players to ensure that we bring this all that relates to this vessel under a sense of control, which will mean doing the hydrographic survey that was done, the tapping on the vessel, making inroads to do the necessaries to begin the process of extracting the contents of the vessel, and also to mitigate against the widened spread of the hydrocarbon that is now have entered into other territories. It is said that this has spread over 800 kilometers. To give you an idea what that looks like, from the top of the center of Barbados to the bottom of the south of Trinidad is actually 400 kilometers, so to speak. So that it gives you an idea what 800 kilometers looks like. Containment continued to be a major work that we are doing, trying to protect the sensitive areas across the island, such as those on the Caribbean seaside, such as Torbay, Pigeon Point, and these places of interest. Another important area is that of waste management. As an island, we have, based on the international support that we are getting from various quarters, we are advised very strongly to look at our waste management plan, and we intend doing that. I know there are discussions that are taking place even as early as this evening towards going forward with that, and to make sure that that plan works going forward. At this time, I would like to pause and allow for the Chief to make his input.
Thank you very much, Director Stewart. Just some additional bits of information. I wish to let you know that earlier this week, on Tuesday morning, a team led by myself, including the Deputy Chief Secretary, the Secretary for Food Security, the Assistant Secretary in that division, and the area representative for Lambo, we met with the fisher folk and stakeholders from the Lambo and the Scarborough area, and we have begun the conversation about relief efforts to those that are affected. Notice quite carefully that I'm using the term relief and not compensation. Compensation will suggest that the THA did something wrong and we are now compensating for that. That's not what's happening here. What we are doing is that we are providing some elements of relief for those that are affected and working out what that would be, and ensuring that we give support to the industry, or rather the industries that are so affected. We have not just the fisher folk, we have some in the tourism sector that are affected. And just today we have begun looking at and analyzing the impact on the restaurants in that area, from the area around the Cemetery Street and along that Wilson Road extension, yes, or the Old Road as we call it informally. There are about 1 or 2 restaurants along that stretch as well. So we are actively looking at what's the impact on them. But we met with the fisher folk, we met with the fish vendors, those that buy the daily catch and resell it, and we met with those with small parlors and tuck shops in the area that also had to be closed because of the effect on the beach in Lambo, and also those impacted in the Scarborough area as well. On Friday this week, meaning the day after tomorrow, we will begin those relief efforts. and those relief efforts will begin with vouchers allowing the affected individuals to be able to go to the supermarket and to make groceries themselves. That relief effort is a precursor to the other relief efforts that will come. At this point, we are still calculating and analyzing what the loss and the damage rather is. So we have asked the fisher folk and those affected to quantify the damages, to quantify what they lost, and we have able staff from the Division of Food Security who is helping to do that assessment, so that we know that we get honest reports and that it lines up with what is real and not what is made up, so to speak, because we are aware that these crises tend to bring opportunities for some individuals. So we are doing the due diligence. But we begin those relief efforts on Friday morning. And more than likely, there will be a press conference sometime thereafter on Friday morning. You will be notified of the time by tomorrow. We are asking that for those affected, that you are to walk with some form of identification, whether it's your national ID, your fisherman ID, or your fisherman license or pass, as you call it, but walk with some form of photo identification for that process. We will announce the time. We will let you be aware of the time, and we can begin to get some relief efforts to you. The truth is, these individuals have had their industry impacted for over 2 weeks, since the 7th. It's inching towards a month, and certainly they have needs that must be met. They have families that they must take care of, and so we want to begin to provide some support, even as we try to calculate and figure out what's the real cost to their enterprise. Secondly, school is reopened at Scarborough Secondary and Lambo Anglican, as you are aware, and TIMA did put out those results to show what the air quality tests have been. And the truth is, the air quality test has been consistent since last week in terms of their readings. I want to do a quick analysis, which is to say that there isn't always correlation between smells and toxicity. So you can have, for example, a bread that is poisonous but smells good. So there isn't a correlation always between smell and toxicity. Notwithstanding that, we listen to the stakeholders in terms of their discomfort, and we paid attention to the fact that we have young children in some instances that will be impacted, and so we paid attention to what the parents were saying and gave them some more time as they asked for. And as Director Stewart pointed out, we doubled down and did additional deep cleanings within those schools. Earlier today, I got the opportunity to pass by both schools, so I visited both the Lambo Anglican and the Scarborough Secondary School, so that I could talk to the direct stakeholders, the pupils or students, and the staff members about the impact. So I want to thank the teachers, thank the parents, thank the other staff members and principals, and of course the pupils in the case of Lambo Anglican, and the students in the case of Scarborough Secondary, for your patience and for also accepting all of the alternate arrangements in the intervening period. We believe that most of this is behind us, but we will continue to monitor. I will have you know that we have the folks from Heritage. They continue to pass by the school daily to continuously test the air quality, and the moment that reality changes, the moment that the air quality is no longer one where it is feasible for the students to attend school, we will do the temporary decanting of those schools and make alternative arrangements. In fact, while I was at Lambo Primary, one of the school supervisors, she was there, and the discussion was that, look, the Division of Education already has prepared Plan Bs so that if something untoward should happen now, we can move almost effortlessly into our Plan B. So we haven't just taken the students back to their original schools, but we are planning in the eventuality that in the evolution of this cleanup activity, that somehow there is an impact and we need to move. But we will continue to test the air quality daily. And I need to remind you that we have a significantly large air quality testing machine located in the compound of the Department of Natural Resources and the Environment, right in the vicinity of the spill, that will stay here until at least September. So we continue to monitor air quality even post the cleanup efforts. The third thing I wish to point out to you is that we have already begun conversations about the post cleanup plans, and I want to be realistic with Tobagonians. Yes, we are seeing the beaches becoming cleaner and cleaner by the day, and I did a drive-by today and observed what was happening, observed the conditions. But the reality is that there will be an impact along these 15 kilometers for a long while afterwards. There is no doubt that there is an impact on the ecology along that 15-kilometer radius. And so I want to give the assurance that even after the cleanup efforts are completed and the beaches are clean, the waterways and drains are clean, that we will continue a lot of the monitoring, and we know that there will be some remediation works required on some of our beaches, because in clearing the bunker fuel that from the coastline, that invariably led to the clearing of some of the sand, for example. So those are things that we have begun to look at. What will be required in the days post the cleanup efforts? And so I want to also assure Tobagonians that we are thinking beyond the cleanup efforts even at this time. I want to join Director Stewart in acknowledging and welcoming all of our international partners who are part of the cleanup operations even now as we speak. And he spoke about TNT Salvage and the work that they are doing in terms of surveillance and the work that they ultimately have to do in the final mopping up, and also the salvaging of the wreck. But I'm not sure if it was mentioned to you before that we also have Petrobras here on island, and they are helping us with some quality assurance issues. And that's in addition to OSRL, who you have met already. And why are we having international agencies treating with quality assurance? And we also have ITOPF, which is the International Tankers Owners Pollution Federation Limited. I know it's long. It's ITOPF, the International Tanker Owners Pollution Federation Limited. They are also on the island. Why do we have these international agencies here doing the quality assurance? It's because we want to ensure that our cleanup efforts are in line with international best practices, that they meet sustainable practices when it comes to, and responsible practices when it comes to the environment, and that we are also able to document for the rest of the world how Tobago is diligent in restoring its environment. And that is critical in ensuring that we promote effective response to the kind of marine spill that we have at the moment. And finally, before we take the questions, this activation, I want to be honest, understand that this activation is unlike any other that we have seen in recent times. That's just the reality. And our last major oil spill was all the way in the 70s. I was not born as yet. Uh, 1979, and it happened much further out in sea and much further east than where we are located right now. And in that incident, we had two ships colliding, two tankers colliding, which caused the spill. But the very fire from that sort of incinerated a lot of the material. So what we have washing to our shores, or what we had washing to our shores over the last couple of weeks, might very well be the largest quantity of bunker fuel or any type of fuel really washing up on our shores in our history. And I want you to recognize that and appreciate that as you drive by and see the clearing of the coastline, the clearing of the sea space and so on, that you are in fact looking at Tobago and Trinidad at work via all of these agencies, all of our volunteers, and the global community at work in ensuring that we restore Tobago to good environmental health. And I think that's important for us to pay attention to even at this time. I will now take questions. So we'll take any questions relative to the oil spill. And I will also recognize those that are online.
Yes. Mr. Chief Secretary Liz Williams from TV6. Just wanted to know from you if the leak has been able, if experts have been able to cap the leak at this time, and if we are into tier 3.
All right, so let me answer the first part of the question, which is that capping it may not be needed at this time because reports that we receive at our last debriefing is that we have not had a leak for some days, meaning we have not had the fuel-like material coming out of the vessel for some days. That does not mean that that all of the substance from the vessel has surfaced, because the nature of this barge, as it was identified, is that it may very well have other compartments that may not have been compromised, that has not leaked out as yet. And that's the reason why TNT Salvage is doing the kind of surveillance work which will tell us if there is more of this substance trapped inside of the vessel, right? So what is happening is that we are trying to mop up all that is in our waters, all that is floating around and floating out of our waters, and also actively trying to ensure that we prevent any of the substances from going around the southwestern coastline of the island. Although by nature, the currents tend to push them northwest and out of the island, we are still doing active monitoring to ensure that the sensitive areas past Kilgreen, past Sandy Point, that those areas are not impacted in any way. And you may observe that there's a precautionary, which is different from preventative. Well, a little bit more than preventative. It is saying that we want to be abundantly sure. You realize there's a precautionary boom that is now set alongside the Sandy Point jetty. That is us being extra cautious, just to be sure that nothing passes that way and goes on the other side. So the investigation is on its way by TNT Salvage, and I'm certain in the coming days we will get some answer from them in terms of what else is contained there. If there is in fact more fuel substance contained within the vessel, then some hot tapping will be done to extract it without it having to leak out and then we take it, so to speak. So, but I want us to appreciate that this small island, with the resources we have here and the resources that we were able to mobilize from Trinidad and the international community, that we have been able to contain this within a 15-kilometer radius. And we have been talking about the impact on a 15-kilometer radius since at least the 8th of March, the day after it was reported, which says to me and says to all of us that we were able to contain it in such a way that it did not impact the coastline much more extensively than it did. And I think we must commend all of the stakeholders in this space for their work in that regard. To the question of it, whether or not this incident is at Tier 3, now the National Oil Spill Plan indicates that the Tier 3 announcement should really come from the central government upon advisement from the Minister of Energy. But I want to break it down beyond that first, because in my mind, given the way we are operating, and we have all of these international agencies here, including international companies, and we are having reports that what was washed up on the shores of Bonaire might be the same product. For that to be confirmed, some fingerprinting has to be done for that to be confirmed. But given all of that, I am of the viewpoint that we are already in Tier 3. As far as I'm concerned, this is a Tier 3 arrangement as far as I am concerned. Given where we are, given the conditions that we have, given that we have had to draw on the resources of international partners, given that we have international partners coming in to do the quality assurance mechanism for us and to help us get it right, given that we have had to have international companies such as TNT Salvage here, and they are not the only international company. Ambipa that is also working here, they are Spanish. A Spanish company, so we have had international companies here. So while the declaration was not officially made, as far as I'm concerned, our operations are in Tier 3 mode at this time. And I want to reiterate something I believe the Prime Minister said when we had that joint press conference, which is that we welcome the international assistance, we welcome our international partners who have all been reaching out. We welcome what you can give to this space. We will welcome you to Tobago to be of assistance in any way possible, because we have to not just have this clean, but we also have to have remediation in several areas. And I want us to think for a moment the kind of work that has to be done post this cleanup in areas like Magdalena, where the beach was already going away, the South Beach was already going away based on climate change and rising sea levels and so on. The kind of work we have to do post this to ensure that that resort, that it has a beach and so on. So my thing is the work will continue for a long while, because it goes beyond just the cleanup efforts, but how we bring this 15-kilometer radius back to pristine condition. And I could already say that we have started the conversations with EMA and environmental groups and environmental non-governmental organizations, with a viewpoint that we are going to projectize this thing. We are going to bring our young people into this space. We are going to have some environmental warriors in the space who we are going to use to assist us in bringing our environment back to pristine condition, and ensure that we take care of all of our wildlife and the ecosystem along this along this 15-kilometer radius. That is extremely, extremely important to us. Okay, so I'll take you.
Good afternoon to the Chief Secretary and Mr. Stewart. You had mentioned earlier that there's a procedure before you declare it in terms of the economic impacts. At this stage, can you give an assessment as to what that economic impact might be so far?
Well, what I can tell you what is happening to bring us to that point. I can tell you I don't have the answer to the question, but I can tell you what is going into the process at this point. So at this point, we have some reconciliation happening among the Ministry of Energy, Heritage, and the Tobago House of Assembly, who are the three major players in this response. The Minister of Finance reached out, I think, a day or two ago to me to really say, look, see how quickly we can get that information along with the justification to the Ministry of Finance so that we can ensure the necessaries are done on that end. So because we have three agencies working simultaneously, it is taking some time to do that sort of reconciliation. Additionally, part of the response to the question of how much this will cost us, and notice I'm saying will as in future tense, is because it is a moving target day by day. So what we are trying to do now is to do a proper estimate of what it will cost based on all the work we see that still needs to be done from here onwards. So it's a kind of very futuristic thing, and hoping that as we budget for it and as we make an estimate for what it will cost, that we are actually not underestimating, but that we are estimating in line with what it will really cost. I will not want to share with you what some of those estimates are, because I did ask a question at the debriefing session 2 nights or so ago. What do you think, for the experts, those who have done this before, what do you think a spill of this magnitude will cost us? I don't want to share that with you because it will be speculative at this point. I prefer to share with you when the accountants and the economists do the proper crunching of the numbers in a real scientific way, so that when I share with you an estimate, it will be an estimate that is true to the scale of the disaster that we're treating with. But know that information will be forthcoming perhaps by next week.
As regards the overall investigation, I know you had mentioned previously that you were looking at some leads. Are you at liberty to disclose anything with us?
No, I wish to be much more strategic in the disclosure of those leads. But I have noted some things coming into the space. I've seen the videos floating around with the vessel that it appears to be just before it sunk, before it overturned and so on. We note all that's happening in the context of that video and looking at all those contextual clues. And there are some other leads, but I think at the most appropriate time we will treat with that. I also want, even as we do this and as the THA look at how it ought to recoup what it will lose, what Tobago will lose from this oil spill, I will want that at this point that we avoid taking anything to the speculative side of things, and that we sort of laser focus on the cleanup efforts, because trust me, we will have sufficient time to prosecute this matter, and we most definitely will.
Mr. Chief Secretary, you mentioned about on Friday persons who have been affected to come forward. Where exactly are they going? Or you are...
We will do the distribution at the food hub where we met with the fisher folk. So the persons that we are treating with first are the fisher folk, the fish vendors, and those very small shop owners along the coastline in Lambo. We will treat with the restaurateurs next week, but we're trying to bring some immediate relief to those directly in the industry, in the fishing industry that's impacted. Because you know where the fisher folk sell their fish down in Lambo there, as you turn the corner by the beach, you know we have a small shop there that sells some goods. She has to close up her doors as well. So we can't leave her out of the mix, certainly. And then we have the vendors that are separate from the fisher folk. And then for some of the fisher folk, I know I'm saying fisher folk and not fishermen, because we do have some women in the industry as well. We also know that in some instances, We have boat owners who employs, other sailors and fishers on their vessel to go out and ply the trade part-time or full-time. So the dynamic, it varies. And so we're trying to capture all of those individuals. And so we met with them. We met with the association, the Fisherfolk Association. We met with the Fisherfolk Association both at the local village level and at the macro level, meaning the island-wide level. They were all in the meeting. And so it was a good meeting, and we are aiming to bring some immediate relief for them. We have...
What time?
So,
What time, Mr. Chief?
we will announce the time tomorrow. I did say that we'll announce the time tomorrow because I'll want to have the division treating with social protection to give me the time. I don't want to give the time without consulting them. We have online Mr. Turner, Whitfield Turner.
Gentlemen, good afternoon. I have 3 additional questions. Some of them just to get some clarity on. First up, can any of you tell us how many barrels of hydrocarbon have been collected thus far? Secondly, I know this is a moving target, but as of the last check, how much funds would have been expended by the THA on the cleanup effort? And finally, is there any confirmation of a link between the cocaine find and the vessel? And is the site being monitored 24/7 so as to ensure that nothing else comes into that space where it's at now that may not necessarily belong there? Those are my 3 questions.
All right. Let me start at number 3 and go up to number 1. Because number 1, we're just trying to pull the data on in terms of the number of barrels collected thus far. But let me warn you that number of barrels does not equate to the amount of the material, because those mixed with the seaweed could not be contained in the frac tanks or the vacuum trucks. So those were hauled away via trucks. And so the measurement of barrels may not necessarily be accurate to the fine detail. But Mr. Stewart is pulling up some of that information, so we'll see if we can give you as much as we can. With regards to the cocaine fine and the vessel, I have not heard any further bits of information from the TTPS that's investigating the matter as to whether it's linked to the vessel or not. I think we can speculate that it might be linked to the vessel, but there is at this point no substantial evidence that it was. I am being advised that that area might very well be an active drop-off zone for this sort of material, even when there is no oil spill going on. I am being advised. I wouldn't know that for sure because I'm not into that world. And so I'm leaving it to the TTPS to do that sort of investigation. But I can tell you that the site is monitored 24/7. We have Coast Guard there, armed Coast Guard. So they're not just there, but they're there fully armed 24/7 on land side. And that's backed up at intervals with Coast Guard in the water at intervals. So they're not in the water 24/7, but they're on land 24/7 at ground zero at the actual site. At the entrance to the Canal Bay area, we also have private security, armed security that's there. So we are ensuring that we secure the locations as much as is possible. To your second question with how much funds expended by the THA thus far, here is the good news. The THA has been trusting from everybody so far. So we haven't spent any money thus far. What happened is that this crisis happened. TEMA, along with the accountants and the procurement people, went into emergency drive, reached out to everybody. They have asked the executive, through me at some point, to give commitment that we will in fact fund the operations, But they have been liaising with all of these companies, engaging them in this space, and none of them have been paid to date. So I want you to see that all the people who operate in there, they're not working for free necessarily, but they came out, and we have to really thank these companies. Let me watch the camera in the eye, although my eye is kind of sleepy. We want to thank all of you for your efforts and for engaging and mobilizing without there being a mobilization fee, without there being contracts, because the nature of the emergency is that we couldn't sit down and wait for legal to write a contract for you to come out and start. We couldn't sit down and tender it out openly. We couldn't sit down and pay you a mobilization fee and all of those usual run-of-the-mill procedures. And so the director teamer, the chief administrator, the accounting officers, the procurement officers, they just engaged you guys as service providers in this space, and they engaged you mostly based on recommendations we got from partners at Ministry of Energy and at Heritage, and engage you so that we could get the work started and done. And you came up, you placed your sensitive equipment on the boat, you brought them to Tobago, and you started working, and now the legal team is working out the contractual arrangements, accounts and procurement. They're working out how to make part payments and so on, but we have not paid a single cent to anybody at this point. But we know that pretty soon we will have to start doing that. So to answer your question in short, Mr. Turner, we haven't expended any funds as yet, but that's the nature of how these emergencies work, right? For the first question, we are looking at approximately, in terms of gallons, 420,000 gallons of this material, or this is 545 barrels, and this doesn't take into account the material that we had to use, can sorb and pick up, those that we had to pick up with sand, and those that we picked up with the sargassum, right? So again, 420,000 gallons approximately, 9,545 barrels, and this doesn't include the figures for the truckloads. The next time we meet, we'll get the tonnage from the trucks, tonnage of materials from the trucks, and we have to also bear in mind that a substantial amount of this material found its way out of Tobago waters as well. So it's pretty difficult to sort of estimate precisely how much leaked out of the vessel. But when we get the surveys done for the vessel, we'll be able to give you what the maximum the vessel could hold, and from that we create the estimate of how much.
Let me just allow
Sure,
me
go
to
ahead.
qualify the statement. The calculations based on the frac tanks, which is about 40 feet in length, which hold approximately 21,000 gallons. We did the calculation based on a 20 of those tankers. You must realize that the frac tanks will also consist of hydrocarbon mixed with water as well, based on the suctions and the vacuuming of the hydrocarbon off the sea. So that is the situation as we speak. There is another type of calculations that need to be done when you do the decantering, and to me that will give you more precisely. But what it's saying to us is that, Chief, is that we are running out of space in terms of containment, and therefore you will see the necessity for additional frac tanks to come into the pit here. I know outside of that 20, there may have been 6 others that may be on the ground, and that needs to be fact-checked, and therefore when we get back to you, but clearly the contractors themselves have been saying we are running out of storage space, and that's real. Thank you.
And as Director Stewart spoke about storage space, when the first time, well, the second time we had this conference, which was on Thursday the 8th, I brought it to your attention that, we were having these properly built containment cells to store. And to date, we have had to construct more containment cells at the landfill. So we have more than double those containment cells, to be honest. We have teams working even in the night. So those trucks are depositing materials even in the night because we work with the current and tide action. So when it's low tide, it has a specific type of response. When it's high tide, another type of response, and we just work until we get the place cleared. I see the hand of Zion Lavende.
Hi, good day. It's actually Jens Laven. I don't understand how my son's name still on my Zoom link. I apologize for that. Guardian Media.
What's the name, sorry?
Jensen Lavend.
Oh, Jemson Lavende. Sorry.
Jensen.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Earlier on, you spoke of relief and not compensation. Firstly, have you identified how many people and or businesses are to be given relief and not compensation? And secondly, this relief that you'll be offering, for what period would that relief extend for? And if it's for the entirety until they open back their business, how is that different from compensation? And thirdly, I know you just answered Mr. Turner with regards to the amount of money being spent, but have you all had a budget as to how much you can spend before going to central government, or would all be coming from central government?
I thank you. In terms of the number of people, so we are catering for 100 people on Friday. The number of those directly affected in terms of industry might be somewhere around 110. We're talking industries here, around 110. In terms of the duration for the relief effort, that has not been decided as yet. But a relief effort can go for any period of time, and it could be any amount. There is no limitations on how far a relief effort can go. For us in the Tobago House of Assembly, for us, the island's government, we are showing our minds that if we have an industry like this that is adversely impacted, that we have to save the industry. And I want to give some context for those who don't understand the Tobago economy at the village level. In Tobago, we have on record more fishermen than we have farmers on the island. The banks will tell you that their portfolios are dominated more by fisher folk than they are dominated by farmers. Most of our villages are fishing communities. And so the fishing industry is significantly large on the island. And yes, we may not be large-scale exporters of fish and fish products, but we certainly are heavy users, but sustainable users of fish and fish product. We still live on an island where in villages you can hear conch shells being blown to signal that there's fish at the bay, and you go down to the bay and you purchase your fish, and you go home and you have fresh fish. We still operate on the basis where most of our fisher folk go out early in the morning and return before nightfall and sell their catch for the day, as opposed to going out and spending days on end out at sea. So most of our fisher folk operate very small crafts that we call pirogues. Those are about 17 foot in length, roughly 23, 25 feet in length. Most of our fisher folk operate out of those types of craft. And therefore, you're not talking about folks who are so big in the industry that they have a whole heap of money set aside for contingency. You're talking about people who fish today, sell today, and utilize that money to take care of their families today and perhaps into tomorrow. And so that necessitates the island government moving with some speed in taking care of those in the industry. Your second question in terms of where the monies will come from for this, I think the Prime Minister said it best when we both had a joint press conference, and I'm happy the media was there to televise it, that this was not in the allocations of the Tobago House of Assembly. This was not budgeted for. And so the central government sees it as its duty to the people of Tobago to pick up the slack with regards to the costs of the cleanup efforts, and I will add the remediation efforts as well, to treat with the impact of all of this. Will the THA wait until we get a sum from the mid-year review or so to begin to treat it? No. We'll use from what we have to try to treat with the matter. The reality is, when you have an emergency, it sometimes puts your development programs on hold to treat with the emergency, and it's no different from the operations of any other country in the world. Carissa Douglas?
Good afternoon, Chief Secretary Augustine and Mr. Stewart. I just have one question as it relates to a timeline. I know, of course, through the discussions with the experts, both nationally and internationally, have you all gotten to the place of being able to project or decide on what timeline we could work with, what I need to remove the vessel to get to some level of control, for want of a better word and term, as it relates to the situation?
Right. So what we did is that we looked at what happened in the Trinidad and Tobago context previously to kind of gauge how long this will take us. Right? And we had Petrobras from out of Brazil who had an experience in 2019. And so they are bringing to bear on our experience as well. Beyond what has happened in the jurisdiction of Trinidad and Tobago, they are bringing to bear on this current situation their experience where they had an incident of a similar nature in 2019. A spill of this size will take between 6 to 8 months to be fully clean. That doesn't mean that it will take 8 months before you could drive again in the areas that are locked off. But for it to be fully clean, we are looking at 6 to 8 months in the short term, right? And when we're looking at waste management, that is up to a year and a half afterwards. Waste management up to a year and a half afterwards. And when we're looking at remediation efforts, you're looking at doing remediation 2-3 years from now. 2-3 years from now, we will still have people in Tobago looking to replant mangroves, to repopulate some ecosystems and so on. So we are in this for the long haul. So 6 to 8 months in terms of cleanup operations. Certainly by the time we get to 6 months, all of the heavy stuff should be gone. What we're trying to do is to get rid of all of the heavy material from the waterways. Then we have to take care of all of the stones and the rock faces and so on. And that's a different kind of treatment. We have to have continuous work with wildlife that is affected and ensure we not only clean wildlife, but we rehabilitate wildlife, pass them through the triage system and so on. And you saw that. I took you through our makeshift animal hospital, so to speak. And we are now engaging others from the space in Tobago to assist with that work. So we're looking at all things being equal to bring this thing to a completion within 6 to 8 months. Will we get some, and I don't want you to go and tell people that it will take 6 months before they could drive back in Lambeau. That's not what I'm saying. I am certain the functionality of some of these spaces will happen way before 6 to 8 months, because some of the cleanup activities will not require us having to close the roads. But to properly complete the cleanup efforts within 6 to 8 months thereabout, but we will return to some public functionality for some of these spaces long before that 6-month period elapses. Mr. Turner, I see your hand again.
Yes, as you spoke about 6 to 8 months, I know Mr. Stewart would be pretty interested in this one. We are basically at the end of February about to head into March, which means we are 3 months away from the start of the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season, which by all accounts is supposed to be another record-breaking year. I was just curious as to whether that would factor into the whole 6 to 8 month period that you just mentioned in terms of whether that would be considered going forward in how you treat with the continued cleanup for that protracted period of time.
Most definitely. As a matter of fact, we are racing along with the dry season to see how much of the bunker fuel that we could extract from our waterways and in the coves and crevices and rock corners, as we call them, and enclaves along the 15-kilometer radius, so as to ensure that when the rains do come, that they don't adversely affect the cleanup operations. We don't want any rainfall right now. And so you can help us pray to the Most High above that we continue to have dry weather for the rest of the rainy season. Sorry, the rest of the dry season. But by the time we get to the rainy season, then I can assure you the bulk of this thing would have expired, and we are looking at some of the finer cleanup efforts, the fine cleaning, the fine tuning, so to speak, will be happening, and that will more than likely be in the rainy season period and will not really impact our work. But certainly we hope that when we get to the rainy season that we don't have tanker trucks, vacuum tankers still here, still suctioning. We want to get all of that done in the quickest possible time, no doubt. But we are looking at the rainy season, and I'll say one other thing, Director Stewart, not to hurt your head, but I have looked at all the predictions from the scientists, and they seem to all be suggesting that this year Atlantic hurricane season could be a terrible one because we have extremely warm waters. It's just something to bear in mind. And pray God that we won't be adversely affected by that type of crisis, because to have that on top of this will be quite a lot for us to consider. All right, I want to thank you all again. I did previously list out a long list of stakeholders, and I thanked them. There are a few others I will want to add as I close this. One, THTI, they have come on board as well to join TRHA to assist us with meal provision for the workers. That's one. And two, I did not mention it the last time, but I must mention TSTT. They have contributed significantly. In fact, our two of our command sites, they are all powered by TSTT, and they are not charging us, so to speak. And so I must recognize them for that. Digicel, they have also reached out, and I want to thank them as well in the mix. Republic Bank and RBC, I can't thank you all enough. You all have been here and a part of the thing. RBC, I love it. I saw you all in your beautiful blue jerseys and so on, getting down and dirty in the mix as well. We really, really appreciate all of these efforts, and we thank all of our corporate sponsors. ADRA, and Director just giving me additional names, ADRA to be thanked as well. and ADRA is the Adventist Disaster Relief Agency. They have also come on board. We'll continue to thank ODPM for being here, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Works, Heritage for being part of all of these operations. Sometime as we get closer to realizing our goal of clean beaches, we will certainly make it our duty to have one of these sessions to be about thanking those who contribute to the cleanup efforts. So I thank you all very much. We keep in this fight. We'll keep working to ensure that we restore the 15-kilometer radius that is affected, and we protect other areas of our coastline. So thank you all very, very much. God's richest blessings on all of you. See you sometime on Friday.